In the introduction to the book, Wiener spends a portion of it asking the reader if they would be happy living in several different theoretical countries. Specifically, he asks if you would be happy if you lived in a country that was fabulously wealthy and no one paid taxes. It turns out that this is not a theoretical place. This is Qatar. The title of the chapter is a reference to Qatar's emergence as an extremely rich nation. The country struck it big after oil refineries were found inland in 1939, as well as off the coast in 71. This led to Qatar becoming an extremely rich country. All throughout the chapter, the effects of this incredible wealth are shown off at full force. Wiener begins his trip staying in a Four Seasons hotel where every single want, need, and theoretical want is attended to. It drives him absolutely bonkers to the point where he checks into a different, lower quality hotel. It is evident in the behavior of most Qataris what the effect of wealth has done to them. Qataris use servants to do simple convenience store shopping so they don't have to step foot out of their air-conditioned cars. Qatari ghost workers that should be working really just spend their time at Starbucks still getting paid due to the tribal culture guaranteeing them a paycheck. Qataris drive extremely impatiently because they are so accustomed to getting their way, something further fueled by a foreigner-at-fault mentality in the courts. These developments in Qatari behavior are not due to the citizens being miserable people. The main contributing factor to these behaviors is that of Qatar's authoritarian regime. The Qatari emir does everything in his effort to subdue any revolutionary thought from his people by showering them in money. The current regime came into power from a coup d'etat, so the risk of revolution is ever present. Wiener describes Qatar as an ultimate welfare state. Gas is 50 cents and taxes are virtually non-existent. One would think that not having to worry about sending money to the government would be a great source of happiness. This, Wiener argues, is not the case. The main argument that Wiener makes throughout the chapter is that money cannot necessarily buy you happiness. Having absurd amounts of luxury does not make you happy. As I mentioned previously, Wiener left the Four Seasons Hotel due to how overpampered he was. He viewed the hotel as a tomb. Admittedly, a very comfortable and air-conditioned tomb. Without having a care in the world and nothing to think about, Wiener started to feel as if he were dead, and this negatively impacted his psyche. He discusses the hedonic treadmill. This is where someone gains massive amounts of fortune that drives their standard of living up, and what was once considered normal to them now becomes uninteresting. They always crave something more expensive, something more exciting, and when they obtain this new thing, their standards only keep increasing in an infinite cycle. The materialistic nature of Qatar reflects this succinctly. To illustrate his point, Wiener purchases a ridiculously expensive pen, note that it is a proper noun, while in Qatar. After spending loads of time weighing different factors about the ridiculously expensive pen, as if it were a new Lamborghini, he eventually settles on a Mont Blanc pen that serves him well. When he returns to everyday life in Qatar, he thoroughly enjoys the use of his pen. While one may think he would gradually lose interest in this pen, in accordance with the hedonic treadmill, this was not the case. This was in part due to the fact he lost the pen in 9 days. Wiener reflects on his time with the pen, ending the chapter by saying, "And while at times I pine for my lost Lavin, I know in my heart that its joys were illusory, a mirage in the desert. The joys this pen could provide is not true happiness, and neither are the joys of the materialistic world of Qatar. While momentary happiness can easily be achieved through money, and while luxury can facilitate the conquest of happiness, you cannot acquire happiness through money alone. Money, in fact, can be used to further isolate yourself from happiness. As one climbs the ladder of life from college dorm to apartment to house, we further separate ourselves from one of the greatest sources of happiness, other people. Money also cannot buy culture or history, another aspect of happiness. Qatar has emerged as a heavy industrial society only in the last 50 years. The architecture built in the cities is also new. There's nothing grounding Qatar in history, and nothing that demonstrates Qatari culture. The emir is attempting to buy a culture, buy a history, by sending a member of the royal family to a plethora of art showcases to purchase works of art. The problem is that money cannot create a past nor a culture. It only has the potential for the future. I believe that if it weren't for the naming structure of the chapters in the book, this chapter would be accurately named Happiness is Not a Winning Lottery Ticket. I do not believe Wiener was happy with his time in Qatar. He experienced comfort for sure, luxury, high society, and he talked with Qataris about their happiness. But Wiener is not happy. What cements this for me is one of the absolutely final things he discusses in the chapter. The final Qatari that he interviews ends his time with Wiener with a prayer. He's facing some important problems, and he asks for advice from Wiener. As a journalist, one of the key rules is to never share anything with those you interview. Stories, however, are fine. It is left ambiguous whether this story helped with the interviewee's problems, but it does get Wiener thinking. What is my God? Well, his God is ambition. He drives Eric to keep pursuing his goals. He forces Eric to keep working. There is no day of rest, no Sabbath. The sad reality is that ambition is a false prophet, but a prophet nonetheless, and his worshippers never realize this until retirement. This, to me, is not the prophet of a happy person. Now, it is evident from the introduction of the book that Wiener is not a happy person, but the purpose of this entire crusade is for Wiener to define happiness in a geographical context. He ends a chapter with such a negative thought, what I would consider to be the most negative thought in the entire chapter. If he truly viewed Qatar as a happy place, I don't believe that he would have ended the chapter on such a negative thought.